What's up, everybody? I'm former quarterback Malik, and if football, sports interviews, and having a good time interests you, then make sure to click the like and subscribe button as it really does help support this channel, and it also makes sure that you guys never miss a new video. Doing and welcome back to another episode of the Malik Rogers Show. And the first thing we're going to start off with is my top 10. The reason why we're going to start off here is because the college football players actually came in with their top 25. And we're really going to go over this top four that they had. So, my top 10, number one, Georgia. They've been looking really good. Michigan, number two. Ohio State, number three. Florida State. And I know some people have them in different places. I kind of have the Pac-12 out. I know the Pac-12 probably is the best quarterback conference out there right now. And it might be one of the best conferences out, period. But to me, I think that with Washington's struggle versus Stanford and some other schools, it just kind of hurts them right now. So I have Washington, Oregon. To be honest with you, I think if Oregon and Washington played again, I'll put my money down 100% on Oregon. I have Texas there. Texas to me is a really, really good team. They might be able to sneak their way. I think the one big game they have is going to be Kansas State. That's coming up. I'm pretty sure it's this week. Alabama at number 8. They still have a couple good games coming up. Ole Miss, they've been playing really good. They're going to play Georgia. I think that's going to be probably their biggest test. And then number 10 is Missouri. Missouri actually plays Georgia this week, which will be a really, really good game. I'm super excited to watch that one. I think Luther Burden has to have a good game. Obviously, Georgia does not have Brock Bowers, which hurts them. So we'll see kind of what shakes up. I mean, these are my top 10. I know for the college football playoffs, they had Michigan at number 1. Or my bad. For the college football playoff, they had Ohio State at number 1, Georgia at number 2, Michigan at 3, and FSU at 4, which is kind of what I have. Obviously, they just flipped Ohio State up top and kind of pushed everyone down. It kind of sucks for Georgia because to me, I think if they could play better teams, kind of like what Nick Saban said, if we could play better teams, we would. Most teams don't want to schedule Georgia. Most teams don't want to schedule Alabama. So it's like, how do you expect these guys' strength of schedule to increase unless one, you force other teams to play them, or two, the conference around them just gets better. And to me, it's unfortunate for Georgia. I don't understand why team has won 2 national championships. You don't lose at number 1, but obviously that's their decision. But Ohio State being number 1, I don't necessarily mind that just because they've won a couple big games. I think their offense does struggle. I think if for somehow you can lock down Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't think they have much of an offense to proceed past that. So speaking of Michigan earlier, what we're going to talk about is my issues with the Conner Stallion. Okay, so 3 of the biggest things I have. So number 1, whenever you're talking about, oh, well, you can change the signals, oh, you can do other things. Well, as you change signals, you have to teach these kids these signals. And not only that, the signals have to make sense with what you're trying to call. So if I call it duck and I do this as like a duck speak, and then I can change it to maybe this as a duck speak. But then how many other signals can I do that can simulate duck speak? Because you got to understand there's probably 100 calls. Not only do you do formations, protections, plays, shifts, motions, different things like that. You got to have a signal for all that. And all these kids have to remember it. And then to be honest with you, over time, especially when you get late in the season, all of the signals kind of start to run together. Yeah, that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't think about is when you talk about, hey, this guy's just stealing signals. Who cares? You can change them. Well, yeah, you're asking a 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kid, tell him remember signals, but go to school, remember everything there, make good grades, do everything that he has to do. And so to me, I don't mind it if it's in game and it's like, hey, you have one signal guy, maybe it's your DC or your OC. He's the only guy signaling over time. You figured it out. But to my point number 2, if you have a pre-made signal sheet and it already has like hand motions and gestures because all you did was sit all week, and not only did you watch the live copy, not only did you watch the copy that everyone else gets, but you also had your own personal copy from someone just sitting there recording the sidelines. To me, that is just it's too much. It's not fair. Technically, you have a copy that no one else has. Which to me is something that should not happen. And the fact that you have to pay people to do it, to me, is just kind of grimy. So number 3, the reason why I really put this is because OCs and DCs aren't, reinventing the wheel. They're not making these new exotic blitzes and coverages. And yeah, every once in a while they'll create something, but for the most part, they're all running the same stuff. Whether you're a 3-4 or 4-3, you're running quarters 2-man, Tampa 2-1. You're going to kind of run something. And what really makes OC and DC good is when they decide to kind of change their tendencies, when they decide to do X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Like when they decide to on the third down do a maybe it's 3rd and 1, they do a little trick pass, or maybe it's 4th and 2, and then they do a run in a spread formation. So if you can get a tip off on that, that makes it extremely hard for situational calling, especially when you're talking about third downs, when you're talking about red zone, when you're talking about backed up, because that's kind of where you got to have a good OC and DC to either get you in the end zone or get you out of a sticky situation. And so to me, I think that it's just kind of flawed in that way. And again, like I said, to me, what makes the best OCs and DCs is the play calls that they call in very crucial situations, allowing their players to be very successful. So next, what we're going to go over is the ACC race could get very, very scary. So what I did was take the top 2 teams that I think for the top 4 teams that could be inside the ACC championship game. So obviously for us, we have FSU, we have Louisville, we still have NC State, and we do have Boston College. But the 2 biggest, FSU, Louisville. FSU's on the road, Louisville's at home. If we can run the table, we might be able to see FSU again inside the ACC championship game. For FSU, they only have 2 more ACC games. They play Pitt this week. They have us. They play North Alabama, and they play Florida. So for them, if they can beat Pitt and Miami, they're good. They're probably going to make it all the way to the at least the college football playoff. Number 3 is UNC. So UNC still has Clemson. They still have Duke. They still have NC State. So they still have a couple, big time games they have to play. I do not see them going 4-0. I think they drop one, especially versus Duke, if they have a healthy Riley Leonard. Riley is really good. Duke's defense, I know, hasn't been playing the best. They gave up 23 to Louisville, but I definitely think their defense catches win, especially in that rivalry game. And then the last team, a team that obviously beat us, they just beat UNC, Georgia Tech. They still have Clemson, and they have Syracuse. They do have a couple other ACC games in there, but to me, those are the 2 biggest. But the ACC could get scary. I think the team that puts their head down and says, hey, we just need to finish these last 4 games. Can you guys give me 4 weeks of balls to the wall, as hard as you can play, go out, give your guts. Like, this is everything that you worked for in the summer, in the spring, when you didn't want to be here, when you had to wake up early, when you went to bed late, when you did those extras. Like this is what you play for. Because if you can go 4-0, whichever one of these 4 teams can go 4-0, is going to play Florida State. And if it's Florida State, obviously it might be Georgia Tech or UNC they meet. But if Miami, UNC, or Georgia Tech can kind of run their slate and go 4-0, I can definitely see it as one of these 3 teams besides FSU playing FSU again inside the ACC championship game. But it's really about how these teams play. Obviously for Miami, I think we got to get our pass game better. I think for UNC, they just got to get more consistent on the defensive side. Obviously they have a great offense. For Georgia Tech, is keep making the magic happen. I don't know how you guys did it versus, UNC. Obviously, they had that late strip, but, just keep finding ways. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, the ACC is a wild card right now. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is the games of the week. So at the top, kind of we talked about earlier, K-State, Texas is going to be a very, very big one. K-State just came off a big win versus TCU. I think that they're looking better. I think they're finally clicking. Again, there's teams that start to click later, and I think they're one of them. Next, Missouri, Georgia. We talked about this one as well. This is a big game for both teams. I would say for this one, I don't really know what's going to happen. I think it could potentially be a high-scoring game because Missouri has weapons. They're going to throw the ball around. They're not afraid to score. But we'll see if Georgia can keep up. Obviously, they have their weapons, but having Brock Bowers definitely hurts Georgia. But I definitely think Georgia sneaks it out just because they have a better defense than Missouri. Next, Washington, USC. Honestly, I have Washington beating USC probably by like 10 to 14 points. I don't think USC can stop Michael Penix. I think Washington has a good enough defense to stop USC a couple times. So we'll see what happens. This is going to be a very sneaky one. Texas A&M at Ole Miss. Again, A&M has a ton of talent. They have a lot of NFL caliber guys. They have a lot of guys that I think will play in the league at some point. And so we'll see how Ole Miss can handle that because, again, they play Texas A&M. I think a week or 2 from now, they have Georgia. So to me, this is going to be the closest team defensively that has NFL caliber guys that are Texas A&M will be the, one really close team that has NFL caliber guys, kind of like Georgia does. And so it'll be a really good test for them as they get prepped for Georgia. And then last, Miami, NC State. I got to take Miami on this one, to be honest with you guys. I think that, whenever you go on the road, I think TBD plays a little better. I also think the run game kind of takes over. I think they kind of, have to hunker together. I think it's going to be a very hostile environment. It'll be a night game in NC State. And I'm very interested how their crowd responds, and I'm very interested how our guys respond. Obviously, our offense hasn't played the best. Our defense has been unreal, but I think this is a game where the offense finally comes alive. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I know I've had fun, and I can't wait to see Miami dominate NC State. Go Canes.